Hi, APUSH. Welcome to part 3 of 4 period 2 review. Before I start, I just have to apologize. The app that I'm using, I'm only allowed to record in 5-minute segments. That's why when you're watching stuff at the very end, I'm either not able to finish my thought, or I get cut off, or I don't make sense. I apologize for all three of those things. But just to kind of finish up what I was talking about with slavery. The Royal Africa Company was founded, which was basically in charge of the slave trade. And there's triangle trade, which is the trade between the colonies, Great Britain, England at the time, and Africa. So you got your raw materials in the colonies that turn into finished products in England that are traded to Africa and back to the New World. And while they're in Africa trading their finished goods, they're also receiving slaves and taking them across the Atlantic Ocean on the Middle Passage, which, as we briefly mentioned in the last video, was absolutely brutal. And over a third of the people died en route, and just, absolutely hellish conditions. Horrible to think that something like that existed for as long as it did. Slavery is race-based at this time. Again, we mentioned how it was passed down from mother to children, and they're growing cash crops, indigo, rice in South Carolina, and tobacco. After the revolution is when cotton is going to really catch on and become king. Because of the harsh labor conditions, the fertility rate amongst African women in the colonies was lower than any other group across the whole colonial spectrum. All right, so I want to move past slavery for a little bit and just kind of talk to you a little bit about the formation of the northern colonies. I'd mentioned earlier how 1620 the Pilgrims arrive in Plymouth, which is near Boston in modern-day Massachusetts. They're escaping religious persecution. At this time in England, in 1534, the Church of England was formed, the Anglican Church. That was the Protestant. That was during the Protestant Reformation. King Henry VIII wanted to break away from the Catholic Church. He did, but within the Anglican Church, within the Church of England, which is considered to be a Protestant denomination, there are a lot of different groups, specifically the Pilgrims, and then more famously the Puritans, who believe that the church has lost its way and they are trying to reform it. The Puritans believe that the church can be reformed from within, and by 1630, led by a man named John Winthrop, they come to the New World and establish the city of Boston. Now, going back, when the Pilgrims came, they established the Mayflower Compact, which is the first written constitution in the New World. But their start, just like in Jamestown, is reliant on good relations with the Indians. The Wampanoags, you've heard of Squanto before, that helped them, get through their first couple of winters, teaching them how to grow food, teaching them how to hunker down for the winters. There is going to be bloodshed very early on, something called the Pequot War, where the people who are now in the Massachusetts Bay Company are going to, attack Indians who were allied against the Puritan allies, and before you know it, the American colonists are, allies with some Indian groups, not others. But you have issues right there in Massachusetts. People who think differently than the Puritans this time can be excommunicated. You've heard of the Salem witch trials. Before that, you had men like Roger Williams, women like Anne Hutchinson, who were banished. Roger Williams himself went to and established what is now Providence, Rhode Island. Later on, you have in 1681, you have the colony of Pennsylvania that was formed. William Penn was granted the land that is now Pennsylvania and Delaware from King Charles II of England. And it was founded as a Quaker haven, so a place of religious toleration for all Christians, specifically Quakers. Conversely, south of Pennsylvania, Maryland was established in the 1640s as a safe haven for Catholics. So Lord Calvert, Cecilius Calvert, Lord Baltimore, Maryland equals Catholic freedom, whereas Pennsylvania equals Quaker freedom. The world is changing greatly at this time. The Atlantic world is formed, whereas there's an interconnected economy across the Atlantic between England, Africa, and the colonies. So you start to see mercantilism develop, which is a favorable balance of trade with the New World. If you're England, so you got to make sure that more gold and silver are flowing into England than out. Then you have something called the Navigation Acts, which limits who the colonists can trade with, meaning they have to go through Great Britain first, and we'll talk about that next.